Honourable guests, representatives of the African Union, representatives of the United Nations, Your Excellencies, the representatives of foreign missions, member states present, distinguished participants, and children representing 5 countries here today. I think all protocols observed. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you all to this important Pan-African Conference on Children and Armed Conflict. As we embark on this journey together, I cannot sufficiently emphasize the strategic role played by the African Union, the continental and regional economic communities, the continental regional mechanisms, member states, and other global partners in contributing to peace and stability on the continent, and to ensure the fulfillment of children's rights. The brunt of armed conflict and warfare is borne by children. Children suffer in conflict in different ways to adults, with their entire future at stake, with their physical, mental, and psychosocial development directly shaped by the conditions they experience as children. Many are subjected to abductions, military recruitment, killing, maiming, and numerous forms of child exploitation. Today, as we sit here, 6 out of 10 of the worst countries for children in conflict are on this continent. But we have the power to change this trajectory through the deliberations and commitments we make during this conference. Listen to a quote from one child. "I lost my friend during the 2016 conflict in South Sudan. I had to run to Uganda for safety. While there, I stayed for 2 years without going to school." Juma. "It's time for us to stop the war and give children like Juma hope for a brighter future." In reality, every war is a war on children, and the suffering of millions of children should never be accepted as inevitable. As Save the Children, we shall continue working to help children living in conflict across the continent. However, the causes and impact of the grave violations on children cannot be confronted by aid agencies alone. This is why we are calling on all of us to join efforts and make a real difference for children affected by armed conflict. Our plea is that all parties uphold standards of conduct in conflict, hold perpetrators to account, and step up investment to prevent the grim impact of conflict on children from happening in the first place, as well as help children that are victims of war to recover from the physical and psychological wounds. Listen to another voice for a child. "Growing up in a conflict zone in Mali denies children like me the right to education, security, and a future with hope. My friends cannot sleep at night due to traumatic situations they have been in. I want to tell our leaders that enough is enough." That was Fatou. In our centenary year, we are more inspired and energized than ever by the tireless commitment and example set by our founder, Eglantine Jebb. Just a few years after she founded Save the Children in 1919, Eglantine presented a declaration of the rights of the child to leaders from around the world, calling them to remember the forgotten children. This declaration laid the foundations for what would later become the 1989 UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, a landmark human rights treaty. However, despite this development, the disproportionate balance between the existence of international norms and laws designed to protect children in conflict vis-à-vis the steep increase in the number of children affected by armed conflict cannot and must not be ignored. Ladies and gentlemen, while it may be impossible to stop conflict on the continent, we can take steps to protect children. Therefore, this conference reinforces the synergy between the 2030 Global Agenda for Sustainable Development, African Agenda 2063, 2040 Agenda for Children, as well as a number of AU policy decisions that recognise child protection as a critical component of the African peace and security architecture. We therefore urge the UN, AU and member states to end the wars on the continent and step up measures to protect children in conflict zones in line with the Silencing the Guns and the Act to Protect campaigns, both endorsed by the AU and UN respectively. To paraphrase children's voices that have spoken out during the Stop the War on Children, a global campaign by Save the Children, do not silence our words and our dreams. Remember, the war on children will stop when all of us, from from citizens, civil society organisations, community leaders, military commanders, heads of state and the international community respect the idea that children should always be off limits during wartime. I know progress is possible. We've done it in areas like controlling the use of landmines, action taken to end child recruitment, and implementing measures to keep schools safe in conflict. Our humanity demands that we act, and our future depends on it. If these children are left behind, we cannot fulfill the promise of the Sustainable Development Goals and lay the foundations for a peaceful and prosperous society. A society where we can guarantee survival, protection, and hope for all children. Together we can stop the children of today from becoming the forgotten generations of tomorrow. Thank you. I now have the pleasure to introduce our next guest speaker, Ambassador Thomas Korte, Deputy Chairperson of the African Union Commission. Thank you.